Devin Meireles é um talentoso escritor luso-canadiano que, apesar de ter nascido em Toronto, tem se aproximado cada vez mais às suas raízes portuguesas. Após o seu avô falecer, Devin assumiu a missão de estudar as origens, as tradições, os costumes da sua família em São Miguel, resultando num fabuloso livro intitulado The Portuguese Immigrant Atlantic Heritage Story.
A inspiração do saber sobre a história do meu avô foi iniciado. It was initialized after, unfortunately, when my grandfather passed away. Recognizing my Portuguese heritage was kind of over my head as a kid. But as I got older and I came full circle to recognizing the importance of my culture and the impact that had on my upbringing, that's where I embarked on a family history project. So I started documenting dates and events and building a family book, if you will. And from that came a series of stories that, as my collection grew, I started writing a narrative about the stories. I wanted to understand my vovoo's experience, like from his feet, from his eyes, what that experience was like, wanting to leave your homeland and forging a new chapter in a faraway place, being Canada.
Devin aborda como este projeto trouxe conhecimento mais profundo dos seus avós, descobrindo não só sobre as suas origens humildes, mas também o que enfrentaram quando chegaram ao Canadá sem conhecer a língua.
So growing up, obviously I had a recognition of who my grandparents were. They were like our caregivers after school. They watched us while my parents worked, and they were our babysitters. And so my view of my grandparents was something different than obviously what my father grew up with, or even his brothers and sisters, right? When I really started to unravel the layers of the onion of who they were and how they got to where we are today, what struck me was the resilience and the struggle they faced to forge this new chapter, and how, at least in the vernacular at home, at Vovô and Vovoo's house, that wasn't really talked about. It was kind of like, I don't want to say brushed off, or maybe that wasn't like top of mind in conversations. They would allude to like what life was like back home and growing up, and Vovoo was very much like that. He walked with a heavy stick, very stoic personality, and he was hard to really get a read on sometimes. So when I started to unravel these pieces, it was very factual based data with regards to like dates and baptisms and who their parents were and the neighborhood, the villages they grew up in, and what life was like back then. And what I discovered was, a big resilience, a lot of struggle. What struck me most was I understood the story of the pioneers. So we had the first bulk order of Portuguese that came in 1957 on the Saturnia. 1953 on the Saturnia. But what I recognized through unraveling my Vovoo story was he was part of like the second batch. He was one of the pioneers not too far off from 1953 when he arrived in Canada in 1957. And that was like a wow moment. Like, okay, to me, reading this and uncovering this story of him, like, Vovoo was a cowboy. Like, I had no idea. He was just like a quiet, simple man on Leslie Street, right? But that was hard-hitting for me when I started recognizing the path he forged.
O seu livro The Portuguese Immigrant, A Heritage Story, tem sido recebido com enorme carinho e fascínio por parte da sua audiência, tendo inspirado uma exposição realizada por Shulman Wagner na Biblioteca da Vaughan, que inclui fotos e excertos da narrativa.
So I discovered Immigrant Story online. The curator, Shalom Morgan, is the man who orchestrates all of this. And when I found this website, it was a series of immigrant stories, not specific to any heritage or culture. It was just Canadian immigrant stories. I said, well, how fitting. I wrote my grandfather's narrative 3 years ago. I'm going to submit. I'm going to express interest in this exhibition he does. So he has an online version where you could see a web portal of all these stories, but he also prints out panels to share on display at these exhibitions. And within 1 month, we took some excerpts from my book, really shortened it with some photos. Within a month, it was on display at the exhibition. When I saw this in person, it was very fulfilling. It was very heartwarming, and it warms my heart to share Vovoo's story with an audience outside of the Portuguese diaspora, and to know that this exhibition is rolling from venue to venue, and it's being exposed to different audiences. It's heartwarming to know that Vovoo's story is being carried on. That was my biggest fear with the whole Ancestry project, was lost history. And if you don't recognize the hardship and the sacrifice our ancestors made for us, it's very easy to lose modern history like this and lose not only their stories, but a piece of yourself that contributes to your story, right? So that was like the catalyst to me starting the whole project, and now to see it being shared like with different audiences in continuation, it's really cool.
Para além desta obra, Devin já publicou outras como Finding Madeira, inspirada nas raízes da família da sua esposa. Assim como Thoughts from a Veranda, onde reflete sobre a importância dos luso-canadianos descobrirem mais sobre a sua cultura, as suas origens e o seu passado.
When you draw that out and actually see, like on a Bristol board, say, of like all these impacts, all these struggles they had to eventually get to you in your life, yeah, it's, you know, it's a deeper recognition of like who you are, who I am, and what they did for me to be afforded the life I have today, and not taking that for granted, right? And truly recognizing and being grateful for something that, you know, that they carved out for me, and that was big.